Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Series 2023, where we aim to add value to people's lives, happening every Wednesday and Thursday on ebizradio.com. We chat everything leadership, coaching, and marketing, and you can catch the Lunchtime Series on all major podcast channels today. And to help us grow the channel, please follow, like, and share with your network, guys. On today's coaching segment, we've got the certified holistic nutritional and functional medicine health coach, and she's been around before. She's the owner of Unlimited You Coaching and the co-founder of Vitamin G Nutraceuticals. Please welcome Stephanie Grosman. How are you doing, Steph?
Hey, Kev. Super good today. Thank you. How are you?
Good. And really looking forward to our conversation today. You sent me a whole email and to kind of go, okay, cool. What are we talking about? There was this one specific topic that I think, is part of what we've been speaking about in the last couple of weeks is how do we declutter our lives and how do we set ourselves up for 2023? But I think, part of that conversation is really how do we add and where do we spend our focus, right? So, but before we start, tell everybody who you are, tell people about what you do, and then we'll go straight into this conversation about what we're talking about today.
Of course. Thank you so much, Kevin. Just off the bat, I want to say thank you for having me on the show again. It is always such a treat to have a conversation with you. I enjoy it so much. So every time I hear from you and your team to do a little talk, I get really excited. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with your community today. And I'm really hoping that we can empower them and set them up for massive success in all areas of their life in 2023. But to answer your question, so a little bit about me. As you said, I'm a holistic nutritionist and functional medicine health coach. And I really specialize in working with entrepreneurs and business professionals to support them in prioritizing their health, decreasing their stress, which comes with it. It comes with business owning and entrepreneurship and everything. We know the levels of stress we deal with. And in my own journey as an entrepreneur and a health professional, I was able to see firsthand how easy it is to neglect yourself while you are building a business or while you are building your career. And that stress seems to elevate, and we focus so much on the business that we're not looking after ourselves. And it has an effect on our physical health, our mental health. It has an effect on our energy, our relationships, absolutely everything. So my focus in the work that I do, because I've experienced this firsthand, is really focusing or working with entrepreneurs to help people manage their stress, reduce their stress, and just prioritize their health holistically. So looking at your physical, your mental, your environment, absolutely everything. To take your health to the next level, which in turn helps you to take your relationships, your business, and your bank account to another level. If we are operating at 60% of our energy, we're going to get 60% of the results in our business. And what I've learned very clearly is it's not always about doing more. Sometimes you need to do less, but do more of the right things. And that sometimes means slowing down, looking after yourself, getting yourself mentally and physically and emotionally in a space where you can actually show up in a massive way in your business, for your family, and get the results and the impact that you actually want.
I love that. So, and that sort of speaks to today's conversation, right? Today's conversation really is going to speak to us about these 4 buckets, but I'm going to ask you what are the 4 buckets, and tell us more about that.
Yes, of course. So every single person has 4 buckets that we fill and we pour out from every single day, whether you are a business owner, whether you are a stay-at-home mom, whether you are a student, it doesn't matter. We have 4 buckets that for the entirety of your life, you will be pouring out of. And hopefully what we'll do today is help you to fill those as well, because we've all heard that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So the 4 buckets, or the 4 areas of life we want to be looking at, is your physical bucket, your physical health, your physical environment. So we want to be looking at the physical. Second of all, you have your mental bucket, what you are pouring out of every day mentally. That is at work, the decisions you're making at home, as even small things like what am I going to wear, what am I going to have for dinner? Like these are all mental things that, or decisions we have to make. So you are pouring out mentally every single day. Thirdly, you have your emotional bucket, which also comes into every area of our life. You have your emotions at work, within your relationships. We get emotional when we look at our finances. You know, there's a lot of emotion in every aspect. So your third bucket you pour out of is your emotional bucket, our spiritual bucket. And when I say spiritual, I don't mean religious. It's a completely different aspect. So those are the 4 areas of life that will, or the 4 buckets that we are constantly pouring out of. And the thing is, I don't think, at least in my experience, not a lot of people are focused on filling all 4 of those buckets. You may have people who focus on the physical, they eat well, they exercise, they meditate, or whatever the case is. They might be focusing on one area, but every single one of us, I can guarantee you now, is neglecting at least one of those buckets. And if they are not full, because whether you like it or not, we pour from all of those buckets. If one is not full, we are not going to be able to operate or to show up in our full potential. We're not going to be able to even identify or experience for ourselves what our full potential is. Never mind what that full potential can actually do in the world.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do we do? What do you do when you find that people kind of go, yeah, but I just don't have time, because this just feels like work. And I think, but I mean, because it speaks to all of these areas, but don't you find that people have this beautiful attachment to the excuse of time? Yes. Because it's like, yeah, we know, like, you've got to do the mental and emotional and physical and all this jazz, but they do that excuse of like, I don't have the time. And the truth of the matter is, it's not that you don't have the time, it's that you don't know how to manage your life. Yes. And I know that's a loaded statement, but essentially you don't know how to manage your life. And if you did, you would have time. So it's a case of going, yeah, I can hear, these 4 buckets are really important, but how do I start managing me, right? Do you think there's an element of really getting your brain on board with self-management to kind of support these 4 buckets in these 4 areas?
100%, Kev. And I think it's not about finding the time to do these things. It's about actively creating the time. And what we need to understand, like, everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. If you look at Elon Musk, who has 5 different companies, if you look at Grant Cardone, who runs $12 billion companies, yes, he has a team, but he's still got the same 24 hours in a day that we have. So it's about creating the time. But firstly, you need to make the decision that you want to even find a solution to this, that you want to start implementing these things. We will only find the time for things that we value, that we want to do. People have a lot of time to watch endless amounts of hours of Netflix every week. And, all these kind of things. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if that is what you're choosing to do, if you really wanted to make the time for this, to create the time, you would be able to, but you need to make that decision. When you decide to start a business, there's 1,000,001 obstacles in your way, but you dedicated to starting that business or growing that business, and you are going to find a way to overcome what's standing in your way. You are going to find a way to grow and achieve what you want to achieve. So the first step is really just making that decision that I am not going to settle for the way things are right now, and I will do whatever it takes. I will start small, but I will start to take the steps to change these things, to start prioritizing these 4 buckets, because if not, the reality of the matter is that we're going to hit a stage of burnout. We're going to see a decline in our relationships. We're going to struggle more at work. We are going to have a lot of negativity or self-judgment because we're not hitting the goals that we want to hit, or in the time frame we want to hit it. So if you really want to get to your goals in the way or in the time frame, if you want to have the impact that you desire, that you deserve, that you're aiming for, this is a non-negotiable. It's something that has to come into it. When you're building a business, you've got to do a budget, you've got to do a business plan, these are all things that come into it. And it's the same with these 4 buckets. It's a non-negotiable. And my advice, Kev, is just starting small. It doesn't have to be an overall, and this is what we'll get into. I'll walk you through some steps of how you can start to implement or start to fill these buckets on a regular basis without feeling overwhelmed. And it might be initially carving out an hour to get very clear to do the exercises I'll share with you guys. It's 1 hour to do the foundational work, and then it becomes 10 minutes a day, or half an hour a week, or whatever the case is. And even if somebody can just start by creating more awareness around these 4 buckets, what are the things that are actually draining my energy from these buckets? What are the things that are stealing my energy, and what are the ways that I'm refilling these buckets? If we could even just start, if anybody from today can even just take that away from this, like the awareness, that is a good first step. But it doesn't have to be an overnight 180-degree like turnaround. It's just small steps. I always say small steps done consistently have a massive impact.
Yeah. So let's start with mental health, for example. You know, the benefits of mental health. I just made some notes around this. Is good mental health leads to a happier, more fulfilling life. Better physical health, where you have mental and emotional well-being. Enhanced relationships, right? Where when you have really good mental health, you have better relationships. You are actively making time. One of the notes that you know I was looking at when we spoke about mental health now is increased resilience, and you know, from being able to have that get up and go, and you know, even in the face of adversity, you kind of setbacks happen, life happens, and how resilient are you, you know, in your mental health to be able to jump back into it. And also then looking at your productivity and success, right? So having good mental health is really kind of going, do I recognize my wins? Do I pay attention to, you know, how I get up in the day, and how do I set myself up for a successful morning, right? Without that, you know, active involvement with my mental health, I'm probably going to fail at it at some level.
Oh, 100%. You're completely right with that. And Kev, with these buckets, they're not isolated, or they're not really that compartmentalized. Yes, they've got core components, but they all flow into each other. So you will see your mental and your emotional health are in a very, very close relationship. Your physical and your emotional health are in a very, very close relationship. Your spiritual and your emotional health are a very, very close relationship. So they work hand in hand, like with everything in the body and everything in life. It is all actually connected and influencing one area, whether positively or negatively, whether you like it or not, influences another area of your life or another bucket.
Don't you want to connect those dots for us? I know there's people sitting out there going, okay, so how is my emotional state going to be affected by my physical well-being? Like, what the hell? That's got nothing to do with each other. Don't you want to, because that's not true. We know it. We both know, we work in this all the time. But essentially, don't you want to connect those dots, as you mentioned, how these things are overlapping and they feed into each other completely? Just give us examples of how they work together.
So let me look at a brief sort of overview of the 4 buckets, and as I share sort of what goes into each of them, I can better explain how they are all connected. But if we look at our physical health, like the things that we would do to feed that, to fill that bucket, to nurture it, would be your nutrition, of course. Physically, what is the food you are putting into your body? Because your food, a lot of people are not very familiar with this, but your food is going to affect how you feel mentally, physically, and I'll share a bit about that. But you need to be looking at your nutrition. You need to be looking at sleep, at movement. It doesn't have to be an hour a day in the gym, but how much movement are you getting? Then we need to look at things like your gut health and your liver, like your detox system, which is not something a lot of people pay attention to. I hear all the time from people, I don't worry about my liver and my detox system because I don't really drink much alcohol. But that is got nothing. Well, that's a part of it, but every single day, our detox system is under an immense amount of stress and strain. It's got nothing to do with just the alcohol. So, for example, if your liver is sluggish, you are going to experience insomnia, very low quality sleep. You're going to experience very low moods, feelings of agitation, irritation, a lot easier than what you used to. You may be sitting there thinking, I don't know why I'm getting triggered so easily. It must be because of my stress or my workload or my age. Whereas, 5 years ago, I could handle this and now I can't. I'm reacting. Yeah. And we put it down to our mental health or our stress, but it actually is very very closely tied to your liver. If your liver is sluggish, this is what you're going to experience. You're going to experience very low energy. So our physical health is just as important. If you look at your gut, a lot of people who experience anxiety, low moods, depression is actually related back to a damage in your digestive system. Your serotonin, your happy hormone, 80% of it is produced in your gut. It's not in your brain. So if you don't have the bacteria in your digestive system that produces your happy hormone, you're going to have low moods, and we're going to feel this is a mental issue or an emotional issue when it's actually a physical issue. So that's just sort of one of the ways that this works together. If we look physically at your sleep, that is something we need to be prioritizing. If you are not getting enough sleep, one of the things that happens within the first 2 hours when we sleep, it's generally around about the hours of between 10 and 12 o'clock at night. We have something that is called, we have this fluid that flushes through our brain to clean it out. So just as we have plaque buildup in our arteries or cholesterol buildup that can lead to heart disease, we have a plaque buildup in our brain as well, from food, from stress, from lifestyle. And that plaque needs to be washed away. And it happens every night for about 2 hours between the hours of 10 and 12. If we are not sleeping, that plaque buildup is not being washed away. We are not detoxing our brain. You are not going to be able to think clearly. Your creativity is impaired. Your problem solving is impaired. And your risk for developing Alzheimer's dementia is dramatically increased. So that is your physical attaching itself directly to your mental as well as your emotional health. So does that answer your question a bit, Kev?
Well, I mean, just as you're talking about it, like when you say it like that, you kind of go, oh, damn, this is far more dangerous than I realized. If I'm not actually looking after all these components and how they really are playing into each other the whole time. And that's why I wanted you just to mix that up for us and really show how all of them are actually connected, because we sometimes we say, I meditate every night, so my spiritual well-being is fine, and but then you're having 6 burgers a day, or a week or whatever. You kind of go, okay, that's great that you're meditating, but what about the actual burgers? How are you looking after that gut health? Because one will invariably affect the other. And I think what's so beautiful, from my perspective as, working with, as one of the assessors on the MIT's Neuroscience for Business, they speak about the gut health and the heart health and the brain health, and how those elements and, similar cells are found in all those areas, so there's intelligence is happening in your body that we sometimes kind of dismiss as, no, well, definitely my gut health can't be that important. It can't, what intelligence is that got? But essentially, as you say, your serotonin comes from the gut. So you kind of go, if you know that as a factual truth, if you're not looking after your gut to that degree, and you're not making sure that maybe it's, a probiotic that you're taking on a regular basis, at least once, twice a week, and actively finding out and researching and, working with you, for example, you wouldn't know this, right? But essentially, that's why you're here today, to sort of unpack this for us and kind of give us that clarity and go, guys, there's so much more to this than we realize, right? But I mean, one of the things that you mentioned is ways to fill your buckets.
Yes.
So don't you want to sort of give us some like proper obvious ways that we can practically go and fill these buckets? Because as you've just heard, but they're all so connected. And if we start, like you don't have to climb the mountain today, but you can step up, the first couple of rocks and hang out there for a while. But it's that starting point where we actually just, how do we start with filling our buckets?
Okay. So like with anything, this will look different for everybody, because what is pulling from your physical bucket is different for everyone. What is pulling from your emotional bucket is can differ for everybody. So I think just understanding what those buckets mean for you and ways that you could potentially start to fill it is important. So I mentioned with the physical, you've got your nutrition, like looking at your food choices. Your movement. Are you walking for 15 minutes a day? Are you doing yoga? Whatever, like, are you moving? Are you stretching? Are you lifting weights? Whatever that looks like for you. Then your sleep, your gut health, and your detoxification. And I'm not going to go into detail with all of this, but just as an overview for people, if you want, when we do an exercise now, if you see your physical bucket is lacking, these are the areas you can investigate. When we look at the mental aspect, Kev, I heard you say building that resilience and everything, which yes, 100% is important, but there is a difference between the mental and the emotional. Yes, they feed into each other, but when we are looking at filling your mental bucket, it would be more along the lines of, are you mentally stimulating yourself, learning a new skill? And you may be very stimulated every day at work, which is fantastic, but do you love your job? Is it work that you are enjoying doing? Is it the good kind of mental stimulation, or are you sitting doing numbers and taxes and accounts where you actually hate what you're doing? So one way to help with that mental stimulation or fill that mental bucket is to learn a new skill in an area that you are interested in. This is going to support your emotional health. It's going to support your spiritual health as well. And I'll share how in a minute. But looking at developing a new skill. Mental health as well is conversations. So, or connection with other people. Are you having stimulating conversations that you really enjoy? Do you have people around you that can help with that positive mental stimulation? So that would be some ways on the mental side. The emotional side is identifying what are your personal emotional needs, because that's going to look different for everybody. For me, emotionally, I need like words of affirmation, and I know that's more a love language, but what do I need to emotionally feel happy? I need to feel supported by the people that are important to me. I need to feel loved. I need, whether it's physical or verbal, but I need to be in an environment where I can give love and where I feel very loved. That supports my emotional health. Affection, those things are important to me, but what would your emotional health look like for you? And that's where connecting with others comes in as well. As humans, we weren't meant to be alone. We weren't meant to be isolated like a lot of us have learned to be since COVID. Like, connection with people is incredibly, incredibly important for your emotional health. So looking at what are your emotional needs, what fulfills you? What are things that make you feel fulfilled? Is it, I don't know, walks on the beach? Is it spending time with your dogs, your kids? What is fulfilling for you? Because that's going to feed your spiritual and your emotional. Then we have our spiritual side, which we could say is also related to your fulfillment. And as I said earlier, spiritual does not mean religious. You have spiritual people and you have religious people. You have people who can be both, and you have people that would consider themselves to fall in neither of those categories. But I can guarantee you now, whether you see yourself as a spiritual person or not in how you operate, we are spiritual beings. We have a soul. Everything is made up, and I don't mean to sound I don't know, like a wishy-washy here or anything, but it's actually a scientific fact that everything is energy. We are made up of energy. we have vibrating cells, we have all this, we are spiritual beings at our essence, if I could put it that way.
And there's science that proves that we have a magnetic process running through our bodies, and that's tangible and measurable. So there is science to prove it. Yeah.
So ways that you can support that, again, would look different for everybody, but identifying for you, what are the things that fulfill you? It might be, for some people, easier to identify what feeds their spiritual life. It might be prayer, it might be meditation, certain forms of yoga, or yoga in general can be a very spiritual practice as well. So it's incorporating small little things like this. It might be 5 minutes of prayer, or 15 minutes of yoga, or whatever the case is. It could be things like getting involved in a community outreach project, or where you feeding your emotional bucket of connecting with people, but also doing something fulfilling, doing something that you are passionate about. And it doesn't mean going out and doing something for the community just for the sake of doing it because you feel like it's just something else on your to-do list, like that you need to tick off. You need to be connected to what you are doing. You need to want to do it. So starting to identify, what are you passionate about? What are the things you want to get involved in? How can you feed your spiritual bucket, your emotional bucket, your mental bucket? Like, what does this look like for you? So I encourage people to sit down and look at these 4 areas and see what are the things for them that can fit into this. For me, it would be like, yoga. I do a lot of yoga. That feeds my physical health, my spiritual health, my emotional health, but somebody else might not relate to that at all. So, or it could just be a physical thing. So looking at, if I can, Kev, can I put out a roadmap for people, like exactly some steps they can follow?
Before you do, when you mentioned now, a bit of doing a bit of spiritual work with, it's not by accident that people who go through burnouts go through a process. Once they realize they've reached burnout, it's not a coincidence that what they do is they spend a lot of time alone, looking for peace, looking for contentment. It's a very obvious, sign that you want to go and find yourself and connect to your own purpose, right? So, I was just thinking how, burnout is quite synonymous with the opposite of what burnout is, and that's finding the peace and finding purpose and finding meaning in doing something for self, right? So it's quite strange when we don't even see it, but once you've gone through it, you kind of go, oh, the very opposite of what burnout is being connected and being purposefully driven from an internal perspective, from an internal locus of control, for lack of a better word. But please create that roadmap for us, because I think that's going to be really useful for people to take away a really good solid foundation from this.
Oh, 100%, Kev. So what I would say, or if I can just put something out there quickly, we're talking about filling these buckets, and filling them is one thing, but something that's also worth looking at is, what can we release? What are the things that drain from these buckets that we can also get rid of, so we're not drained so fast? And that release is sometimes a lot easier than starting to incorporate or starting to fill it. So a release could be different, but what are the things that you could release? It might mean letting go of soda, which is drawing from you physically. Instead of looking at, okay, I need to change my diet, can I just release the soda that's pulling from my physical bucket? What are ways that you can release? And something that's great to release any kind of buildup or tension or things that are drawing from your physical buckets is, as I mentioned, it's things like yoga. It could be a walk outside. Getting outside in nature is a fantastic release for you physically as well, mentally, emotionally, physically, but just walking, moving that tension out of your body, out of your muscles. We carry so much tension in our connective tissue. We often focus on, maybe exercising or stretching for our main muscle groups, but we don't focus that much on our connective tissue. And that is what really holds a lot of our emotion, a lot of our trauma, a lot of tension. And trauma that you experience can actually live in that connective tissue and make us very sick. So how can we release this? Through movement, through yoga, through walking outside, are ways to release physical things that are physical negative energy. On the emotional side, things like a good cry every now and then is a great release. It doesn't have to, you don't have to wait for it to get too much. Just cry. Like, too many of us keep it in. But
I love crying. Crying is like it's my go-to kind of emotional release. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna cry now, and then I'm gonna finish, and then I'm gonna get up and go on. I love crying. Yeah.
A good cry, a good laugh is a great release for things that are stealing your emotion or stealing energy from your emotional bucket. Sometimes it's just a sigh, a big breath in and a huge sigh of releasing. There's so many things that even a shower, one of my favorite ways of releasing my day is at the end of the day, as I'm in the shower and washing, I literally wash the day, wash the worries, wash everything off. So I'm getting into bed feeling like I've released, I've let go. So things like that. Your mental release can be things like closing open loops. So many of us have these small little commitments we keep adding to our to-do list all the time. And there's a lot of small things that we could actually just make that decision. Just make the decision so you can close the loop. We end up operating with a browser with 1 million tabs open on it, and it slows down the processor, right? It slows down our brain. And there's so many subconscious open tabs that we have. Kev, if you and I are talking now and say, you know what, we need to make plans to meet for lunch, and we end this call and you and I don't make a plan, I might consciously not be thinking about it, but because we had that conversation, that's an open tab, it's an open loop immediately, and it starts to steal the energy.
And people don't even realize they've got like all these open tabs happening. It's like, and then some people have left a tab open for like 6 months. You're gonna go, are you actually gonna get to the tab, or are you just gonna ignore it for the next 6? Just close the bloody tab. Yeah.
Exactly. And you may not be able to close it right now. It may be something that's a bigger project. If it takes you less than 5 minutes to do, just do it now, like just get it done, or less than 3 minutes, like you choose your time frame. But what I found to be one of the most effective things for myself, I started to do this last year and it was an absolute game changer, is every time I had an open loop or something I had to do, instead of just thinking, oh, I'll remember it or I'll do it later, I wrote it down. I have like a Trello board, everything goes on there. You might have a notebook, but everything, no matter how small, it might be buy eggs at the store later today. It might be phone my mother, whatever it is, like it goes on that board, because I know I check it like multiple times a day. And as long as it's written on there, there's no chance of me forgetting about it. So my brain releases it immediately. Because it's written down, it will get done when when I choose to do it. So closing open loops is a great way to release a built up like mental energy that could be draining you. As for a process, like let's get down to some actual real tips here for people.
Yes.
But what I would say, first of all, is I encourage people, Kev, you and I think I've spoken about this on previous podcasts. It's an exercise I do with every single one of my clients, and every single time they are blown away. It is incredibly easy and incredibly powerful. But what I encourage people to do is take your average day. This is why I say the initial time you set out for this is maybe an hour, but it does get easier. So do the deep work, create an hour for yourself to do what I'm going to share with you now. But make a list of your average day, absolutely everything that you do, every responsibility, every commitment that you have in that day. It's as small as waking up, getting ready, waking up the kids, making coffee, making breakfast, whatever, emailing, phoning, driving to work, having a shower, everything you can think of. Write down your average day. And then start to tally up what that day looks like. Add up all the things in that day that are draining your energy. Doesn't matter from what bucket, but things that are stealing your energy or demanding your energy. and then take a look, tally up the amount of things in there that you are doing that give you energy, that you enjoy, that are fulfilling.
Yeah.
And you see that on paper and you see how unbalanced that ratio is. Like, that is a huge wake-up call for a lot of people. And you might do, for example, 100 things a day, 87 of which are stealing your energy and 13 of which are actually giving you a bit of enjoyment or fulfillment. And the ratio is so distorted. And then you wonder why everybody's walking around feeling fatigued or exhausted, anxious, overwhelmed. Well, look at that ratio. Try do that for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And then all of a sudden it makes sense why you feel the way that you feel.
Yeah.
So just clear on that.
Stephen, I also just want to sort of reiterate that, from a coach's perspective, because we both as coaches, part of why we do this, why we lament about it to a degree, is that if you are serious about changing your world, you'll change it.
Yeah.
Right. And that means you'll take the action, so there are many people that get to do what they love to do, and they thrive because of it. Right. So if you are serious about making that change, you'll make it.
Yeah.
Right. You'll do it. You'll do the work. But if you're not serious about it, you're going to listen to this and go, oh, yeah, now I'm going to get it. It's going to be an open tab. I'll get to that there and I'll get to it next week when I'm not that busy. Like, you'll stop everything right now and kind of go, okay, cool. Let me do this and let me see and take stock of my happiness level and what is really making me thrive and what is not making me thrive. Because then you'll know and you'll be serious about your 4 buckets and how to actually support your life in an active, forward, courageous and encouraging way, instead of just being at the mercy of everything, of your gut and your health and your mental well-being or your physical well-being. You're not at the mercy of any of that. You're actively getting involved with how to change it. And I think that's so important.
And it gets easier, Kev. You're so right with what you said, and it gets easier. Imagine getting double the results that you do right now with 50% of the effort that you're currently putting in. Like, why wouldn't you want that? Doubling your results with 50% of the effort. And that's what it becomes, because work-wise, you put in 50% of the effort you're putting in now because you have more mental clarity, mental energy, you have more physical energy, you show up more excited for the things that you are doing because you actually start to take stuff off of your plate. It's doing less to achieve more. And the other 50% of the time, you pretty much, when you are spending more time on yourself, showing up differently, I don't even know how to put this into words. It's something I've experienced so powerfully in my own life. When I wanted certain results in my business, I thought I had to do more to get more. And that led me to burnout. It led me to not enjoy what I was doing anymore, because what I was doing just became another thing that I had to figure out, another thing on my list that I didn't have energy for. And I'd lost that love, that passion of why I'd gotten into it in the first place, because I was, in theory, I loved what I wanted to be doing, but the execution, it had drained me so deeply that I had nothing left to pour from. And I mean, you said in the beginning, you know me, I run 2 businesses. Within those 2 businesses, I have multiple different programs and things that I build out, that I run. I coach internationally, I coach leadership, I coach health, I coach all these different things. And I'm like, what I'm trying to say is my plate is full. My plate is incredibly on top of, I'm sorry, it's not even 2 businesses, it's 3 businesses that I run. And on top of that, I still manage to do my normal movement and look after myself physically. But in terms of stress and mental health and these release in these buckets, I still find a time to do an hour of like yoga every evening. I still find a time outside of weekends to go for a beach walk at least 3 times a week. Maybe you're not at the beach, but walking somewhere outside. It's not because I have an abundance of time, but I learned, like, I'm not going to allow myself to hit the point of burnout and hate everything that I was doing, hate my day, or feel controlled by my day. I don't want to lose the passion for everything I'm doing. I don't want to show up for my family as half a person because I don't have energy mentally, emotionally, I'm not available for people. And it actually, when I stopped doing so much for, I would say, what I was trying to build, when I stopped doing so much physically for that and started to focus on my own well-being, naturally, I showed up bigger for everything else around me. I got double the results in things that were important to me, my business, my coaching, my clients. I got double the result in that with 50% of the effort.
Yeah.
It's easier. It really gets easier. I promise you, it might be a different way at first of doing things, but it really gets easier. You just need to start. You just need to start. But Kev, I know we're coming towards the end of our time, and I quickly want to run through those 5 points that's going to make this easy for people, because, you know,
Yes.
planning your day is just a start. But what I encourage people to do is look at your 4 buckets and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, I don't even have a bucket. It's like so empty, like it's not even there. And 10 being, it's, you know, it's overflowing. Like, where would you put yourself with each of those? Second, look at each of those buckets, and underneath it, write what is pulling from that area. And is there something you can do about it? So what is pulling your energy? What is demanding from there? Your finances, the negativity of others, drinking soda, eating takeout, social media, too much TV. Like, you know, what are the things that are pulling from that bucket in every area? Then I encourage people to write out 3 ways that they can improve every one of those areas, and attach some action steps to it. Like, physically, I can improve my sleep. How can I do that? I can not look at my phone for an hour before bed. I cannot have coffee after 4 p.m. I can have a cup of chamomile tea before bed and do 10 minutes of bedtime yoga. You know, create some action steps for yourself. Once you have almost like this roadmap of each of these areas, prioritize the one that is most important to you. And see out of those action steps. So if you're taking your physical, for example, out of those action steps, what can you start to incorporate daily, or maybe it's even weekly at first? And start with something small. It doesn't have to be a massive, massive, massive change. Start with something that would be the easiest for you, or the most impactful. So you can start to feel the result of doing it. That's going to motivate you. That's going to give you more energy, physically, mentally, everything, to implement more changes. So that would be my core sort of guidance for people. And if you want to take it a step further, create a 30, 60, 90-day goal. And you can do it just for your number 1 priority. You don't even have to do it for all of them. But create a 30, 90-day goal. We do it for our business. Why would we not do this for our personal life? Well, you should be doing it for your business. If not, you need to start. But why wouldn't we do it for ourselves personally? And this may come across very structured and analytical, but I promise you, this gets to be fun. It's just small steps that are filling your bucket every day. It might feel strange at first because it's new, because it's not something that you used to. But when something new is fueling you, it can't be bad. Like, you are going to enjoy it to a point where you want to do it. That's why, like, you know, my yin yoga at night, a non-negotiable, regardless of how much work I have to do. Oh, it's gone 8 o'clock. All right, tomorrow's problem, because this is Steph's time now. Like, this is what I get to do in order to be able to go 12 hours the next day. Because if I don't do it, I carry everything from my day to bed. I wake up in the morning carrying yesterday and the day before. So I'm already starting my day at 60%, not even 100. But I can do that release at night. It's a non-negotiable. I let go of everything in my day, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I can start fresh at 100% capacity the next day. So that would be my guidance.
Fantastic. I love it. I love it. It's a roadmap, guys. You write down those 4 bucket areas and really unpack it, asking yourself those necessary questions. Steph, we literally have run out of time. Guys, if you want to check out more and find out more, as certified holistic nutritionist and functional medicine health coach, she's the owner of Unlimited You Coaching and the co-founder of Vitamin G Nutraceuticals. Stephanie Grosvenor, thank you so much for joining us. Guys, if you want the links, you'll see the links are in the Dropbox below. And I can't wait to have you back and to chat some more. Steph, thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much, Kev. I look forward to being back with